we're not going to go away just because we want to save lives. We want to help you save lives. So please don't think I know you said we're holding a carrot out for this money. We know what will be successful for Safer and Meet Your Match to work there, and that involves a coordinator. If what your decision is to leave here and say we're going to put this group together and we're going to come up with potentially other ideas, it might be that we decide to move forward with this idea, but we're going to come up with some other ideas, and those ideas, good ideas that will save lives, we're with you. So we're not going to go away just because you don't choose Meet Your Match and Safer, but we sure are going to say, well, we think that some of these programs are really helpful and can save lives.
And Dr. Weiss, please, I didn't mean that as an insult to you folks. I just was concerned that we are in desperate need of donations, so we tend to kind of grab when it's there. So it's not about you folks, it's about our desperation for our limited resources. So forgive me if it came across that way. But thank you. I like the motion as it is, and ASPCA certainly as volunteers can participate in the committee too. I mean, we've got a number of. I think it's a great launching point to get that consensus. I think that it's not going to succeed if we don't have the support of the community. So we can start a pilot program, but it's as good as the people that are in this room right now, and that's why I think that that's where we got to start. These are the people we rely on, and we can't push them away.
I think the motion on the table, in essence, rejects the proposal of the department. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying it's reasonable. Any conclusion is reasonable. But I think that my interpretation of the motion is a rejection of the department's proposal. And so I just wanted to say that because I think that we have a distinct kind of question in this proposal, and that is the ASPCA's participation with a grant and a coordinator. Whether we choose to take that route or not is I think both conclusions are reasonable, but I think that beware the sense of a middle ground when it's really potentially a rejection. And so that's my thought about it, one way or the other. And I'm conflicted about this, so I'm really not in a position to advocate. I think I have my own idea of what I want, but I don't really feel like I want to get up here and advocate one way or the other because we've heard so much and a lot of real good insight, and I think that all the commissioners I know are capable of making this decision without my advocacy. But I think that just so I can frame it, I think this is a rejection of the proposal, and maybe that's what you guys want to do.
Yeah, I believe it is it is, and I think it will delay. It's a delay. It's denying what the department has put forward and potentially delaying it to a later date.
Well, let me clarify what I had intended for it to be, because what I heard was that even if we go forward with what's on the table, there are a lot of questions that still aren't answered about what even the pilot program is going to look like. So my idea was to, in figuring out all of those questions, include a broader population of the rescue community and other people who have come out and expressed concerns, so that either those concerns can be allayed or confirmed or whatever it may be. I mean, maybe we figure out that it's, and I think everyone said that we might realize that it's not going to work, or we might realize that it's going to be great. Either way, it seems to me like more people would be on board if we do come to the conclusion that it is going to work, or everyone would just be more informed. So my intention was not at all, just so I'm clear, to exclude the ASPCA and the possibility of that from the process by any stretch of the imagination. That is not what I intended to say.
Well, I think if you don't mind, I think also it is the it about it. The it is, it's not discussing just the ASPCA pilot program. It's discussing other options. And I think it's great if ASPCA wants to participate in such a discussion, that they sound like, and please correct me, that their intent is to help us get animals out and mark the animals and what is it, be consumer transparent. It sounds like that's happening, and that's the kind of exciting that that even they're not locked into it has to be theirs. They're willing to come to the table and discuss other options, and I think that's phenomenal. I think that's really, you know, I mean, one size doesn't always fit all. Like, we're, you know, a certain community, and if they could come to the table and discuss it with us, I think that's great. I like the idea of an advisory group getting together that represent the different interests here and come back. And it has happened, and yes, it's a delay. Yes, it's a delay, but I think it's a delay for the right reasons.
I agree that what you read sure does sound like something very different than explore the pilot. So putting together a group to help assure the pilot is successful by answering the questions that have yet to be answered, that's different than what it sounds like a think tank to develop potentially ideas that have nothing to do with assessment, have nothing to do with anything other than getting more animals out alive, not necessarily about any one thing. So I think those are two different things, and whatever you choose, you choose. But I just want to acknowledge that they are different, and if you move forward with what's being proposed, that I would agree that's the rejection, at least right now, of moving forward with this pilot. And I think there's potential for both of them. I think there's potential for putting together a group to help ensure success of this pilot and to think that through. And there's some benefits to looking at globally, and maybe both of those can happen. We have things to figure out how to get more lives out is great.
So I got a question. Would the ASPCA participate in that this potential advisory group if we created it?
Good question.
And if you did participate, how much time would you spend? I mean, how many man hours would you be willing to send? I mean, I know you guys have day jobs.
What an advisory group would be. The advisory group is going to be a group that's just going to sit have a conversation. This is not about developing program. It's not about going into the shelters and doing one-on-one work in shelters. This is about a group of people getting together to have a conversation. We'd love to be a part of that, and we see some great energy in LA. How much time we commit to it? I don't know how much time anybody's going to commit to think tank. We certainly will be there. It's going to meetings, but beyond that, I'm not sure. It depends on what gets developed. We're looking at two separate things. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here. Sorry.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, of course, because we welcome your feedback as well. I mean, we love the think tank should include people that have a sincere interest in this, but in getting the animals out alive. And I think that over the years, I've seen emails, I've seen volunteers that have had these suggestions. It's similar to Meet Your Match. There have been these suggestions before. So it's not just sort of thinking, free thinking. It's thinking, and let's put something together. It may not be this formal thing, but so I like the motion. I don't think it's an out there into an abyss kind of talk where it's a way to stall an action indefinitely. No. I think it's got to be, and maybe it has to have benchmarks where we have certain meetings and we've got benchmarks and we've got to come back with something at a certain date.
Here's why I started thinking in those terms, because I came here tonight sort of thinking that if we went forward with this pilot program, it had a lot more absolute things that it had to include than what I feel like I heard tonight, which made me feel better. Like, we can have certain aspects of it that work for Los Angeles and exclude pieces of it potentially that don't. So that's why I'm sitting here, like I said, still feeling like I don't know exactly what this pilot program would be, and I just want there to be more collaboration and involvement from the people who really know what the issues specific to Los Angeles are when it goes into place. That's what I'm trying to get at, and I probably shouldn't articulate that.
Exactly. Like ours, we certainly need to include some grooming in there and some other, things that we could throw in, and you get to know the animal that way too, and they kind of look a little bit better. Well, we have some grooming. We don't have a lot of grooming. We have You know, so let's get it formalized. Let's get it actually a team together that does something. So I have seen situations that are different shelters, and it's not about staff, it's about how many animals are coming in, and you got 2 people on shift, and they can barely keep their head above water. So, you know, we get a formal, established group of volunteers that are certainly charged with certain things. That's how we modify. And our concern with the SAFER was in your program guidelines, it actually says it cannot be modified. So that's why I think it's better that we have, you know, that there's the trademark guidelines and the various things we have to have the ASPCA name up there. And I just think that we're better to get the committee together first and talk and include you folks by all means with your input as well.
I mean, let me
so
ask.
I like the motion as is.
Let me ask you and Dr. Weiss if what I said makes any sense from your perspective, and if that's something that could work with us working with you. Like I said, I'm not trying to, you know, exclude the ASPCA from the process at all. But and there have been so many questions, I'm not sure whether what I've articulated is something that resonates.
Can I add one thing? That,
Yes, please.
The first step kind of is what you're already saying. It's examining.
Right.
So looking at the key people, those volunteers, that staff, those rescues, at whatever shelter that is that's chosen, that is the first step towards a pilot, is very much examining what is required, what kind of support is needed, building that first, and then going forward with implementation.
Okay.
So I think we're actually talking about the same thing. It's just a matter of if you want our name in there or not. As far as that examining part is a part of what we would do. Now, we would be very focused. It would not be a think tank, as Dr. Weiss just said, and as being discussed, it would be very focused on how can we go towards this goal of implementation, getting that support that's needed. So just for
Right,
clarification.
and that's not any different than what I was into. I don't want to just have a bunch of people in a room sitting around throwing out ideas and then we all go home and nothing happens. That's
But
In my mind-
you say that that's what you're saying, but I don't think that's necessarily what everybody on the commission is saying. So that's why I just want to clarify and just, you know, you're saying, yes, let's move forward with this pilot with acknowledging that step 1 of that pilot is to get the right people at the table to be thoughtful about how that pilot could successfully move forward, and if it can't, it stops there.
Yeah,
That's
I think
different than what I'm hearing.
I think we're just having maybe just a semantics problem,
Yeah.
because I think we're all talking about trying to develop something
In my mind,
and not putting it into operation until we have gone through that first step process that you talked about with the involvement of the people in the groups that we've mentioned, including the ASPCA, and then determining if it can work, and then if it can work, then we move to the next step.
Are we looking to see if we have the support for this program, or are we just having a brainstorming session? That's my
No,
question.
not just a
No, it
random
wasn't a
brainstorming
no.
session.
that's the
No.
distinction in my head. I think the city
Is
attorney...
it specifically around meet your match and safer?
Yeah, that's the distinction, is the city attorney suggested that perhaps we vote with this language to develop but not yet operate. That would be the program that everyone's talking about.
Yes.
What I'm hearing from your motion is much more of kind of a broader exploration of ideas.
That's not what I intended. What I intended was, like I said, I don't know what the pilot program means.
Can I make a comment when you're done?
Please help.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to say, I didn't your motion, I did not interpret it the way that Commissioner Carroll interpreted it. I didn't view it as a repudiation, rejection of ASPCA or their involvement.
No, this proposal, not the ASPCA, the rejection of this proposal.
Right, well, okay. Okay, well, now I'm even more confused. But I don't even think it matters if we put ASPCA's name in it or not, does it? Because if we have that's the point. That's the point. If I can finish my sentence, because we don't have to implement it. So if we don't, then it's moot.
What is it? Is it this program?
Yeah, this. And if we reject this ASPCA program, we could, because I think we're smart enough to do it, develop an alternative. If we, you know.
Wait, so now I'm confused because her program sounded like it was a review, consideration of other programs that not necessarily as ASPCA. Now you're saying what we're doing is we're actually talking about, we're getting together to talk about the ASPCA. I thought we were getting together
Okay, well then
about,
I'll just quit talking because I'm obviously not making myself clear to anyone.
Please clarify, because I think we all want to go, and I'd love to hear clarification, Commissioner Jensel.
I think that the choice is this. Do we want to move forward with this specific program, or do we want to move forward with the idea of exploring other ideas? But I think that we have to make that decision.
Right.
And when I say move forward with this program, I don't necessarily mean operate it, but I mean develop it. We have to choose. Do we want to develop this specific program, or do we, in the word of reject, maybe that's a strong word, do we want to not support this one and choose to explore other avenues? But I think that if it's this program that we want to choose to develop, at least in theory, then it has to be this program, and it has to include ASPCA. And if it's not, then we exclude ASPCA in the language, and we do our own thing. But I think we have to at least understand what the question on the table is, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about that.
And I would just like to clarify, I think that from what I heard the general manager say, is that developing this program, because part of that would be a working group that would include people who are in favor of this program and against this program, as part of the developing of the program, you would need to get the community on board before you could start operating it. But the other alternative is simply a general think tank which gets you nowhere.
I did not intend to suggest a general think tank.
So if I'm right, your motion would be that the community, it's not ASPCA, the community think, I'm going to call it a think tank, but they're getting together to develop a program. It doesn't have to be meet your match ASPCA. It could be a modified version of it. It could be something completely different, but it is a group of interested parties that come back with a recommendation of a program. It is a specific task that they're going to be completing to bring to us a specified program, and it's not necessarily ASPCA, but it is a group of people that are joining together, who have had ideas over the years, who have wanted to come to the table and say, let's do something. Now we're saying, let's get together and develop that program.
Commissioners?
And we might decide the ASPCA is the right one, but get together first and decide what other options exist, and let's look at those options as well.
Commissioners, I would like to see a little more competition here. We've got 6 shelters. If we can try this pilot and see if we can develop a pilot that has enough support to operate in one shelter, there are 5 other shelters that people can bring us pilots for, and we can see which one works the best. I mean, we don't have to, throw out something that is here and being offered to us that I believe works. I've seen it work in 2 shelters, and that we have support for. There are 5 other shelters that another pilot program could be offered.
To that, maybe repeating what the general manager said, we can vote to develop this program and still vote to have it.
Yes.
Yeah. We can do both simultaneously. They're not mutually exclusive. And that's a valid consideration, but I'm just trying to
For people who live in the city.
Don't you want to just evaluate these programs? Isn't that what you were suggesting? I mean, it's so simple.
Excuse me, but we can't, if we keep getting comments from the audience, we will be here until it's after 2 o'clock in Florida. And it'll be 2 o'clock here as well. The question is, I think some of it may be the lack of clarity in your motion.
I like what you
Okay, well, maybe, because to answer Commissioner Caro's question about what I was suggesting, you said, your question is, would we be developing this program? And my concern is that I don't know what this program is, and I don't think that's been decided even by the ASPCA, because the pilot would need to be developed, or at least that's what I understood.
But that's not, I mean, I would say that we know what meet your match is. We know what's safer. Whether we choose to move forward with both safer and felinality and caninality, those are things that we're not going to know until we get into the shelter. The program is the program. Making sure that the support is there so that we're saving more lives, so that there's that have the support, that the rescues are there, that the volunteers are there. So there are some things that are developed, and I think some of those things that you're talking about are supplemental programs.
No, I understand that, and I don't have specific examples in my mind, but I feel like when questions were being asked, certain people were asking, well, would this be part of the program? Would that be part of the program? And the answer was, we don't know yet. And so that's why I'm in my head thinking we don't really know yet what the program will be. Not that it's completely amorphous, but
that's what I think the term develop means.
Right.
In the motion.
Yeah, is deciding which program would make the most sense at that shelter.
I think the question here is, are we developing an ASPCA type of program, or are we developing a community program? And I like the idea of it being a community program.
But the ASPCA program would be a community program too. So can we not, I mean, that is a semantic that I would rather we didn't have.
All right, another ASPCA. Okay, thank you. It's either an ASPCA program that includes the community, or it's a non-ASPCA program. Thank you, Dr. Weiss. That includes the community.
okay. Does someone else want to try and make a more comprehensible motion?
I like your motion, and I think I understood the intent of it, but I don't have any objection to modifying the written recommendation to, one, exclude the word and the phrase and operate, and then just make some kind of provision for who's going to constitute the committee or the working group or the advisory board or whatever you want to call it, and then I would be happy with that.
That's a second motion, or is that lead, Commissioner?
I'm just making a comment. I didn't actually make the motion.
Oh.
There's a motion on the table, and then that's...
Thanks, Jim.
That was my amorphous motion. I think that's on the table, right?
So that was
Can I withdraw it myself?
That was not a motion?
I don't think I can make a motion.
I'll withdraw my motion because I don't think anyone
There was a
understood.
second on it. There was a second. Then can I see your motion so I can make it again? Jesus.
Doug, what's my motion?
Incredible. To strike the word and operate.
To adopt the Meet Your Match program.
Yeah, and that the working group would include, as part of the development, would include both members of the community that are in favor of a safer program and those who are opposed to it or who are unclear about it and concerned about it.
And the commission.
So it would be, and there would be one commissioner on it as well, but it wouldn't be your working group. This would be a working group put together by the general manager, and then all of this development would come back to you because without your approval, it cannot operate.
Right.
Okay. So we would have to.
Yes. So all it does really is it strikes the word operate.
So your motion now is to say, let's go forward with the ASPCA Meet Your Match pilot program, but we discuss and talk about it, about their program in a group.
Yeah.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Kind of. What I'm saying is that we'll work to develop the program, which we could ultimately implement or not. So we have the option to not implement it.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
As per the city attorney with the second by Commissioner Jensen.
Actually, it was a motion by Commissioner Sanjal and second by Commissioner Yanis.
But with moral support.
Call the vote.
No. I would like to.
That's getting cranky.
lady
can I
in the
ask,
lady.
how many people would be, I mean, composed on the advisory committee? And who will be deciding who those people are? Can I ask that question?
Well, I think we would look at who was here tonight, and get the speaker card, and pick 2 people who opposed it, 2 people who were in favor of it, 1 commissioner, 1 staff, and ASPCA.
Can we stipulate that the board president and the general manager agree on the composition?
Sure.
And also the report back, when you would like the report back to the board.
If you're having 2 people for it and 2 people against it and 1 ASPCA, I would say you should have 3 people against it. Because that's basically, you're saying 3 people for it, 3 people.
Well, the
I mean,
point
you're
of
kind
the
of
committee is
stacking.
to try to work out the differences.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
Well,
I mean, you can have 3 and 3. I don't really care, but if you get the committee to fill the room, it just retracts things. I would assume people would take input from other people.
The trumpet vote.
Well, to qualify my vote, I'm coming from many years of hearing similar input from a community, and I just think we could develop our own programs. So that's why I was hoping that we could have.
Where's the funding?
I don't think that's precluded.
It's not the
I don't think so. You're talking about an
shelter.
ASPCA program development, and I think we can have an LA animal community program, a non-ASPCA community. So and there's a semantic thing here, and I'm getting what the semantic is, and fine, I'll be outvoted, I get it, I'm just telling you this.
No, Kathy, I would encourage you to develop an alternate program. I think we should. It's not a bad idea at all. But that doesn't mean we're multitaskers around here. I think we can handle
this too.
more than one thing.
Yes. Let's vote on, who made it? Jensen.
Wait, the motion was by Doug?
It was by Commissioner
And he's on this chastising us.
So Commissioner Gentle's making a motion to go with, we'll say it again, Commissioner Gentle, and read it instead of saying what's written on the paper, if you don't mind. Thank you. I mean, it's not my, I don't mean to boss.
Look at, it's the motion that's before us, minus the phrase "and operate," and including the provision to develop a working group that's appointed by the general manager and the board president, and they have to agree upon the members of the community. I think you can guys, I just trust that we don't have to get more specific than that.
Well, the motion that's written, so let me go back over to the written motion, that has excluded the operation. Thank you, Chair. That the board, this is not my motion, I'm reading what the motion is that he says, that Commissioner, that the board authorized Department of Animal Services to work with ASPCA, Meet Your Match, and Safer Experts to develop, scratch, operate a pilot program. So to develop a pilot program and then go from there. Is that what your motion is? The community. So this is in essence a motion to move forward a little bit more with the ASPCA pilot program.
To develop it.
One shelter.
Just clarify.
Then there are 5 other shelters, so the community group could still form and come up with their own other program.
No money.
No, scratch.
Who's going to pay for it? Well, you didn't want the answer. Who's going to pay for it?
Okay, so let's, and did you have a time frame appended to that for when it comes back to us?
Doug, did I have a time frame?
2 weeks.
I think that the president of the commission and the general manager can decide on the time frame depending on how the development is moving along.
I hope it's, I would hope it's the shortest reasonable time.
Well, it should probably be back within 90 days or less, depending on you want to come back with something.
Yeah, I don't sleep anyway, so I'll help move it along. Okay. So that's the motion on the table. So is there a second?
Yes, I second it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 No.
We have a motion and a path for one. Next item on the agenda